few guys on the roster, offense, defense. Guys that we remember recruiting and watching in high school, and now to see them as expected being great players in college.
All right, welcome in. That was Michigan coach Jim Harbaugh. And congratulations to Jim Harbaugh. Drop my phone. Congratulations to Jim Harbaugh being named the Associated Press Coach of the Year in college football. And we are joined by the publisher of the Maize and Blue Review. If you're watching here on YouTube, you see him right there on the screen, Josh Henschke. Josh, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dennis. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. What do you think? I'm looking at the quote from Jim Harbaugh, a rising tide lifts all ships. So he had that ready to go. He's named as Coach of the Year. A little bit of a surprise. I know you had a vote for some kind of Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was for Rivals, and you voted for that coach trailer for San Antonio, Texas or something, right?
Yeah, it was the Charles Robinson Coach of the Year award through the Football Writers Association of America. So that's another one of those National Coach of the Year awards. So I put Jim Harbaugh first, number one. I'm trying to remember my ballot because so much has happened since then. But yeah, Traylor was in there. Luke Fickell was also in there. Can't remember where I put him on the ballot. But long story short, Jim Harbaugh was number one on my list. I thought he was most deserving. Absolutely.
Well, there you go. And you know what? It takes us right into some of the hardware that was being handed out last night. And I was looking at a kind of hardware madness. And I know Michigan State fans feel like that when you take a look at it, but Michigan's going to be playing Georgia in the Orange Bowl. It's 3 weeks from today. So Jordan Davis ends up getting the Bednarik Award. That's for the best defensive player overall in college football. He's very deserving. He's a great player. Michigan's going to scheme against him and everything else. But Aiden Hutchinson, he wins the Lombardi, and that's for the best lineman. Now, Davis is a lineman, so he's the best defensive player, Hutchinson. So already you start saying, wait a second, how does that add up? Different entities voting for different guys. I don't know if they'd like spreading it out, giving everybody a little sample, because sometimes there's a sweep there, but maybe it speaks to this year and there being so many guys that are up there that, deserve some recognition. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of trophies handing out, a lot of awards handed out at the end of the year. But the fact that Hutchinson wasn't a Bednarik award finalist was a bit of a joke, in my opinion. I think he deserved to at least be there. You're a Heisman finalist as a defensive lineman. I think that's a little outrageous. But and that's not to say that Davis wasn't deserving of that award either. But I think Hutchinson deserved to be in that conversation, and I think he would have given him a run for his money. But yeah, just to look at what's to come with Michigan and Georgia, not to get too far ahead of ourselves here, but both teams are loaded with talent on defense. You can make the argument just from a stars and recruiting ranking standpoint that Georgia is more talented in that regard. But both guys deserve to be in the conversation. Obviously Hutchinson was robbed, but East Lansing also has their gripes too, and deservedly so with Kenneth Walker as well. So that's just the unfortunate part of these award shows. Some voters tend to sway more towards their conferences and try to avoid voting for players who deserve it that they don't necessarily watch on TV, especially West Coast. I think Christian McCaffrey comes to mind too with his Heisman trophy campaign that he probably deserves. It's just he's on the West Coast and not too many people watch him. So it is what it is at this point. It doesn't affect where Hutchinson will go in the draft. He's going to be a top 3, probably maybe even number 1 pick in the draft. So obviously having that hardware is nice, and from a recruiting standpoint too. But again, results matter more at the end of the year than hardware that you win from a individual standpoint.
Yeah, and you can wear yourself out because you look at this the player of the year that went to Bryce Young. Well, Hutchinson was number 2 in that, but he couldn't, even get on the list for the Bednarik. And then Jordan Davis, he didn't finish in the top 5 for the player of the year, and yet he won the defensive player of the year. That doesn't make any sense. And it's one of those things in the example. I know Michigan State fans, they got Kenneth Walker wins the Doak for the running back, and he's not a finalist for the Heisman. And then Mel Tucker, the team is only picked to win, 3.5, 4 games. And then, he's not talked about as the coach of the year. Right. You got to be, I don't know, it's got to be the right time, right place, right finalist. All of those kind of have to line up because you can make a case for both of those guys. But just like we went through all these things, none of that really makes sense when you go through and this guy's here, but he couldn't be on the top 5 for the player of the year. And yet he's the defensive player of the year. It's like, what? Hutchinson couldn't make the Bednarik. So, all of that, you'll get yourself tied up in knots, man, if you get too worried about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many just branching paths and twists and turns to kind of, track everything down. It's a lot to keep track of. And, at the end of the day, I mean, personal awards are great, but, I'm sure Michigan State fans would rather, win the Big Ten and be in the in the playoffs than really kind of worry about where Kenneth Walker kind of sits on the Heisman campaign. I'm sure they would trade that if they had the choice. But I mean, there's a lot of I guess you could consider it politics when it comes to these awards. A lot more stronger campaigns from one program to the next. Fan base is stronger than the other and things like that. There's a lot of moving parts to all of this award show stuff. And I mean, it's hard to keep track of because there's new awards being released every year, and it's hard to keep track of which ones are more noteworthy than the other.
Playoffs. Okay, we'll stay with the theme of the awards. We should congratulate Hutchinson for getting that Lombardi, the Lou Groza Award.
Yeah,
Jake Moody, Michigan kicker, and it was almost a punchline midway through the season, that's Michigan settling for field goals and all that, but they were able to put that in the rear view mirror, and Moody was really good on extra points in those last couple games.
Yeah.
Exactly what Michigan wanted. Michigan had another award winner earlier in the week. It was the Frank Broyles Award, or the Broyles Award, that went to the top assistant. Josh Gaddis nabs that. And then, in the ensuing days, Josh Gaddis's name, whether it's Duke or Virginia, being talked about as a possible head coach there, filling those vacancies. You feel like either of those spots that, Gaddis will end up, heading there?
Well, I think, just from talking to people that I know, I think really Virginia is probably the most likely. It really comes down to what Tony Elliott is going to do. He's the offensive coordinator at Clemson. Anthony Poindexter was in the conversation. He is a defensive assistant. I'm not exactly sure I think he's cornerbacks coach with Penn State, was a former Virginia player. He was also in the conversation early on. I mean, from talking to people, it sounds like this Virginia coaching search has just been a giant mess. They decided to move on from Poindexter because he was originally going to be the guy, Poindexter, and then they moved on to Tony Elliott after he showed interest late. And now Tony Elliott's kind of waffling on what he wants to do. I mean, he's also weighing up an offer from Duke. But, from talking to people and reading things, it looks like Mike Elko, defensive coordinator from Texas A&M, looks like the likely guy to be at Duke. So ultimately, long story short, it really comes down to what Tony Elliott wants to do. He's kind of weighing options. There's been reports early today that a decision was supposed to come this morning. There was the decision supposed to come at noon. But obviously those 2 time frames have passed and nothing has come out yet in regards to what he wants to do. So ultimately he's coming down to weighing does he want to take the Virginia job? Does he want the Duke job? Or does he want to stay at Clemson? I mean, he's been a coordinator there for, I think, 11 seasons. So, I mean, he has some longevity there and will continue to have it if he decides to stay. But yeah, I mean, if Elliott decides he doesn't want the Virginia job, I fully believe that it's going to be offered to Josh Gaddis. And my belief is that he would accept that job, which kind of creates, I guess, a little bit of a distraction if he decides to depart right now, because you're just so close to signing day. He's kind of in an awkward spot too. Does he leave the program immediately to help finish a recruiting class, or does he stick it out for the playoff game? There's a lot there. So, look for what Tony Elliott is going to do. If he decides to take the Virginia job, I think, Josh Gaddis is safe in Ann Arbor for the time being. I don't think he'll be without his fair share of suitors moving forward, though.
Yeah, if I was Elliott's agent, I would tell him to hang on and aim higher. I think he could get a bigger job than Virginia. And that's why, they talked about signing day, and it was good for the kids and everything, with the coaches, having to figure out and bolting and everything else. Maybe they will go back and end up changing that up. So if Gaddis, we don't know if he would stay for Wednesday. We don't know if he would stay for the bowl. Do you think Jim Harbaugh would stay in house? I'm looking at the list here. Sharon Moore had such an excellent season as offensive line coach, and you know what? When he takes to the podium, he really has a command of the room, which is it's that kind of things. Those things are important when you're up there. I'm very impressed by him. Mike Hart's always been that way. I think he would be there as well. I don't know. I hadn't heard much. I heard a little bit of Matt Weiss talk. I don't know if he'd be a dark horse there, but you think of one of those three guys, certainly they'd be candidates. Do you think Jim Harbaugh would be inclined to stay in-house if Josh Gaddis would leave?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but it makes a lot of sense. They have options. I think, if you talk about Matt Weiss, he has the most play calling experience. He helped a little bit with play calling this year, along with Jim Harbaugh. So if Gaddis were to depart, they'd at least have someone there that's familiar with, calling plays and the offense. So with Mike Hart and Sharon Moore, I mean, obviously two guys that, are fantastic guys and quality coaches, but don't have play calling experience. So obviously Sharon Moore has the co-offensive coordinator title. But I'm not 100% sure how he involved with the offensive play calling. I'm sure he was involved with the run game. Of course, being involved with the offensive line, because I know that was something similar that Ed Werner did previously with the program. So, I mean, it would be an interesting dynamic and dilemma there that Jim Harbaugh has. I mean, if he were to decide to go in-house and stick in-house, it would make a lot of sense, in my opinion, and I think it would be a smart move. Not only does it cut down on staff turnover, it also increases morale because you've got familiarity there with the players. Obviously, success with those coaches on staff. So, it's going to be an interesting situation. You're probably going to let someone down if it's between those three. But unfortunately, that's the way it's going to be. I mean, someone might get a promotion, someone might not. But it just all comes down to fit and what makes sense. And those three guys, certainly make sense in a lot of ways.
That's Josh Henschke, TMBR publisher, the Maize and Blue Review, the definitive source for all Michigan news. And so we've got Orange Bowl stuff to get to here ahead. We got signing day to get to. I've got some audio, but I just want to tell people, so if you're just thinking about here today, it is 3 weeks away from the Orange Bowl, which is New Year's Eve. It also means we're 2 weeks away from Christmas Eve. Mm-hmm. And that's coming up fast. I've just been thinking about the Orange Bowl. I haven't really been thinking about Christmas, but it just reminds me to tell people for a great idea. If you have anybody in your life that is a Michigan fan, whether it's somebody in your family, somebody you work with, maybe it's just a friend, a great gift this holiday season would be a subscription to the Maize and Blue Review. So get a year of the Maize and Blue Review for $20, 21 cents. You go to michigan.rivals.com. Promo code Rivals 2021. And if you're thinking like, what a kind of if it might be a little bit out of the box there, but I can guarantee, if you got a Michigan fan and, they get that subscription there and they have all this news, and it's really an oasis for Michigan fans, all this news funneled into one spot. everything that's going on. Like, it takes a couple days. You feel like an expert. Everything that's going on with Michigan, signing day, coaching carousel, news with the team, news with the other team. It's fabulous there. You get involved with the den, the community. So a great idea coming up for Christmas. All right. And so you're just 2 weeks away. So go ahead and take care or you should say take advantage of that. We look forward to seeing you there. So out of the Orange Bowl, I've got a few sound bites for you to listen to. I want you to react to them. Now, you can just say, look, I don't want to hear this guy. It's Kirk Herbstreit. He was talking on a podcast, but he had a lot of nice things to say about Michigan, and he had some good points. So I don't know. Do you want to not hear him, or do you have it like a hard and fast rule, like no Herbstreit, or are you okay with listening to him?
Let's do it. I have no issues with Herbstreit.
All right. I want to thank the Ryan Russillo podcast. That's where Herbstreit was just on Wednesday, and he had a lot of nice things to say about Michigan.
I'm a fan of Jim Harbaugh's. I like the fit. I never really understood even their own fans more than the outside world getting upset with him. I get it. You don't win the big game. You get frustrated with your coach, but they've been close. This team's special. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, to me, the reason he's in New York isn't just because of his stats. People have compared Will Anderson's stats to him. How can he dare be in New York? Look at Will. Will Anderson's a freak. I put him on my ballot, so I got it. I understand how great he is. But Aiden Hutchinson's, his will to win and his emotion and his energy has more to do with him being the player he was in 2021 than his tackles for a loss or his sacks. He demanded this team show up every Saturday and play with consistency.
And Josh, that's why if people are thinking about the Orange Bowl and they're thinking, hey, Michigan's a big time underdog here, why should I feel good about Michigan's chances? I think it does start with Aiden Hutchinson. He's a game wrecker. He can be a difference maker. He can be the #1 overall pick. He can get in there and, he doesn't win it by himself, but he can be a difference maker here in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the heartbeat of this program right now. They just don't make him like they make like Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, he's one of a kind. He's a special breed. Obviously, the maize and blue bloodlines run deep with him. I mean, he gets it. I mean, he got it from a young age, gets it now. Just makes a ton of sense. So, yeah, I mean, what Herbstreit said was just 100% correct. I mean, Will Anderson certainly deserved to be there. He's a freak. His stats were unreal. But from outside of a performance standpoint, like Kirk said, the will to bring the program up a notch that it hasn't reached in decades is worthy of recognition alone. I mean, that's just the leadership he has, on top of the physical abilities, obviously, the mental ability. He's just, a prototypical NFL player on a program that is going to sorely miss him next year.
All right, we got two more from Herbie. Here's one with Kirk Herbstreit wondering if Michigan can crank everything back up.
They got a special thing. They got a special bond, a special belief. They climbed that mountain. They put that flag down in Indianapolis. They're Big Ten champions. And now they got to keep it going. Can they be the team that they were against Ohio State and Iowa? That, in my opinion, they were playing their best football in their last two games. Can that momentum continue to Miami, where it will need to against Georgia?
All right. Well, what about that idea? Momentum. I think we agree with Kirk Herbstreit. Michigan playing their best ball there against Ohio State. I'd say the last 6.5 minutes against Penn State, then the whole game against Ohio State. And then the entire game, maybe not the first series or two against Iowa, but then the whole thing. Do you feel like there could be some carryover, or does that momentum stop because of the near month before they take on Georgia?
Yes and no. I mean, a lot of it has to do with execution. Yes, play calling has been excellent, calling the right plays at the right time, but a lot of it comes down to execution. So that's the $1 million question. Can Michigan execute against Georgia? I don't necessarily think the month, basically the month off that they had will really, I guess, stop execution. I mean, yeah, things were humming and things were just seamless. I mean, you'd expect a little bit of rust, and then it goes the same with Georgia too. I mean, Georgia's is going to have the same amount of time off as Michigan. So it's not like one has played more recently than the other. So yeah, I mean, I don't expect it to be right off the bat as soon as kickoff starts. They're just going to be rolling down the field and acting like nothing ever happened. I'm sure there's going to be some, rust and some hiccups here and there, but, just the way that they were playing, the way the entire team was executing on all phases of the ball. I mean, that's not necessarily something that just stops when you have a little time off. So I would be utterly stunned if Michigan came out absolutely flat and reverted back to its old self, where it might have, struggled a little bit earlier in the year.
Yeah, I'm with you. When you execute, that gives you confidence, and it also, you have that confidence, and you feel like you can get some things done. Like against Ohio State, they were fantastic on defense right out of the gate, and they were fantastic on offense on their first drives, but they weren't that way the following week against Iowa. If you remember, Michigan was 3 and out, and then Iowa marched really right down the field, missed like a 30-yard field goal. So it's not like they just carried it over from the Ohio State game and came out there and kicked their tails right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that has been consistent in those last two games is coming out of halftime, both on offense and defense, they've been fantastic. And so I'd say you just hope that part would continue, whatever adjustments, whatever they see. But I think they have that confidence because things are working for them. I think, you start telling the guys, hey, you do this, look, it's working. All of that stuff feeds off of itself. So I think they should be right at the top of their game. I mean, all signs, at least for me, point to that. So
yeah. And I think the halftime adjustments, and that's a credit to the coaching staff. I think especially Mike McDonald, he's been fantastic all year with adapting on the fly, making adjustments on the fly, but particularly at halftime. I mean, it's the difference between the first half and second half, especially against Ohio State too. You can make the argument. We're just fantastic. I mean, the defense had answers, and it didn't fold like years past where, they get into a little bit of adversity and then things fall apart. They had answers for what teams were throwing at them. And again, that's once you get into that groove, it's going to be really, really hard to get out of that groove. I mean, you really have to try hard to get out of that groove. So, that also, like you mentioned, that the adjustments, that also gives me confidence that, things can continue to go the way that they're going right now.
All right, one more for Herbstreit. He talked about the Dogs, and he's got some questions about them.
We don't know. We don't know about Georgia either. I mean, we thought Georgia was the one team that was above everybody else. And then they show up against Alabama, and obviously Bama dominates. And we talked about how great Bama looked, but we didn't talk about Georgia. Like, you start to look at Georgia's schedule. Are we all being kind of fooled into thinking that Georgia was this elite team? Meanwhile, they hadn't necessarily played elite competition. I think they're a great team.
All right, Herbie thinks they're a great team, but there's been talk, like not by Herbstreit and not by Kirby Smart, that maybe Stetson Benton would be replaced by Daniels. Maybe there'll be a rotation. One thing we're pretty sure of is that Michigan will have some kind of rotation at quarterback. We're just not sure what it's going to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Georgia talk's a little bit of a hot take. Obviously, they've deserved to get where they are. You can make the argument that the competition isn't strong, but at the same time, you have to produce. And, obviously they didn't against Alabama. I think Alabama's been not the same Alabama that we're used to, but they showed who they really were against Georgia. And maybe Georgia showed who they really were. It's hard to make that argument. And I think that argument can be definitively either debunked or, confirmed when they play Michigan in the semifinals. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan's going to have some things for them, and obviously that defense is what it is. I mean, the numbers are what they are. They've performed against you can make the argument weaker competition. So we'll see. I mean, this is the next big test that the Wolverines will have to face, and we'll ultimately see if the Georgia program is legit, or they've been inflated a little bit by their schedule. But again, like I always say, and like I've said about Michigan in the past, you can't apologize for what the schedule says and who you play. I mean, you have to play what the schedule says you have to play. And if you win or lost, that's up to you. But, all of that narrative will be erased come, December 31st.
The narrative in recruiting as we look towards Wednesday, a couple things before we get to signing day and the Michigan recruiting spotlight. One, we appreciate everybody watching here live. You see the numbers on the screen. If you're listening on the podcast right now, I urge you, me being as a radio guy, we really like reviews and we like the subscriptions. So subscribe. And we'd like you to rate those. So that's one order of business. One other thing, while I have your attention here, everybody that's listening, tomorrow, Michigan basketball is back in action. They are taking on Minnesota at the Chrysler Center. CJ Baird is going to join me about 10 minutes after the game to talk about what he sees against the Gophers. So if you're a Michigan basketball fan, you watch that game tomorrow and you're watching right now, you say, let's check out the post game. Let's see what they're saying. So we'll bring that to you on the hardwood tomorrow. Before we get to the spotlight, two people had some things that they wanted to ask you. Here's one from Antoine. He says, all of your top players will have your Heisman-type numbers. I think it's more impressive when you get good numbers against quality teams. Other than that, you can pad your stats against lesser opponents. I'd say this to Antoine. I was looking at Will Anderson Jr., who had more sacks than Aiden Hutchinson, and people were like, well, where was he? And, he showed up on like the AP Player of the Year award, but he wasn't there for the Beckneric. We know he wasn't there for the Heisman. That goes back to it. But Bama at one point, and maybe he split the votes a little bit with Bryce Young, although Bama did have two players go to, as finalists last year. If they were able to go to New York, they would have. And Mac Jones and Devontae Smith, the ultimate winner there. But I wonder for Anderson, against Auburn, he had one sack, but, Bryce Young was the one, the last series, he brought him down there. And the other thing is, there wasn't their second to last game, but third last game that they played like, I don't know, New Mexico State or something, some kind of walkover. And, people aren't going to be, while Aiden Hutchinson was out there getting 3 sacks against Penn State, you got Alabama taking on, Huckabuck State, and beating them 100-0, who cares?
Yeah. No, I think Antoine's right. I mean, the Heisman moments come during big games, come during the rivalry games, come during moments where, teams need you the most. And that's when Aiden stepped up to the plate. I mean, obviously the Ohio State performance probably maybe overshadowed a little bit by Hassan Haskins' 5 touchdowns. But, his play during that game, 15 quarterback pressures was the most in Pro Football Focus history, which is insane number. That's legendary stuff. I mean, that's stuff that goes down in history books and people never forget. That's what you call Heisman moments. And that's how you build your Heisman campaign. And really, if you think about it, he single-handedly got into the Heisman conversation because of that Ohio State performance. It was just that good and that impressive. So, yeah, I mean, your I guess your legacy and your Heisman campaign is judged upon what you do in these big games that define a season. And we'll see what happens in the semifinal with Georgia, with Jordan Davis as well as Aiden Hutchinson. They have to, obviously the Heisman will be handed out by then, but you are still needed by your team to perform, and this will really define the rest of Hutchinson's legacy as a Wolverine moving forward.
Yeah, I noticed that Daniel Dash is tweeting out. He is the Maize and Blue Review beat writer, and he pointed out that Michigan football and basketball right now currently has the Associated Press Coaches of the Year. That's pretty impressive. One thing, it's going back for a second, but Ray saying that losing Gaddis would be a tough loss. It'd be a tough loss, but they do have some options there, and it is one of those things when you're having success, it comes along with it. I think basketball is the same way. I'm surprised that they've been able to keep all their assistants intact there. So it's just part of it, and you wish Josh Gaddis well if he's able to go.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say hi, Dad. Thanks for the comment. I mean, Josh Gaddis would be a tough loss, but that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is in college football these days. I mean, you're going to be turning over staff, and Michigan has done that plenty under Jim Harbaugh. I mean, that's just what happens with good programs. You lose assistants to whether it's promotions or whether these assistants get head coaching jobs elsewhere. I mean, Alabama goes through it every year. It's just what it is. It's just what it is. I mean, one assistant doesn't make a program, but it can certainly either hurt or help, but it doesn't make it entirely. And these choices are going to be made by Jim Harbaugh ultimately about replacements and things like that. And ultimately, if Josh Gaddis were to leave, I think Michigan would be fine. I mean, Jim Harbaugh will find a guy that is on the same wavelength as him in terms of philosophy and direction of where this offense will go. So, it might be a tough pill to swallow right now, considering timing too. We're in December, right before signing day, college playoffs coming up, but ultimately I think they'll be fine.
Speaking of signing day, it's going to be a big day around the Maize and Blue Review. Can't wait till Wednesday. It's kind of like Christmas and your birthday all in one. We'll have all day coverage. It's going to be fun. I can't wait myself to be involved in it. I'll be up really early, and I'll be checking everything. Now, we do have some kind of idea about Michigan's class here, and it's had an up arrow for a while now. They're up in the team rankings inside the top 10, all the way up to number 9, which was not really predicted even 2 weeks ago that they would be able to vault all the way up to the position that they're in here. They've got 20 commitments as far as I know, but I know you're out there future casted. You're out there on the phone. You've got other things going on. Do you think that they stay at 20? How high can they go in terms of class, and then also with their team ranking? I know there's a lot of questions there, but there's a lot going on in recruiting.
Yeah, no, excuse me. There definitely is a lot going on. There's a chance that they could go higher than 9 that they're at right now. A lot of that big bump was due to the Rivals' restructuring of the rankings. They gave guys bumps, like Zeke Berry got a major bump. Mason Graham got his 4th star. Colson Loveland got a 4th star. So those big bumps were because of that. But, Michigan definitely has a chance to add to its recruiting class here, as the days go on. And just because the signing day is coming up next week doesn't mean that they can't add to the class. Obviously, there's a February period as well. So, Michigan's in a good spot with a couple of players, more particularly Keon Sabb. I do like where Michigan's at for him as a Clemson decommit. He visited over the Ohio State game, so that would certainly help. He's a kind of a safety linebacker tweener type. I think he projects more as a linebacker at the next level. But there's definitely some opportunities for Michigan to add to this class, and how many they'll add. I mean, that's the $1 million question. I think they could go as high as 24. But that stuff is always fluid because, you could have guys entering the portal, could go to the transfer portal to bring some guys in as well. And maybe some unknown decommits, not saying it's going to happen, but, there's a lot of variables that go into how many guys they can take and are willing to take. So, it's going to be an interesting run to the early signing period here. There's a couple of decisions that, Michigan is waiting on, and, could either be good news or, at the end of the day, if they miss out on some guys, still good news, because I think this is overall a very strong class that addresses, a bunch of needs on both sides of the ball. It's going to be a fun little trip as we head into our first signing day.
And it's rapidly approaching. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We got 5 days here before the early signing period. Going to be a big blowout here. The Maize and Blue Review. It changes like every minute. That's why you should sign up and get involved there on TMBR, like we told you should, whether it's for your own Christmas present or not. It reminded me when you're saying, Mason getting his 4th star. it's the holiday season. It's a Wonderful Life. I mean, you're familiar with that great Christmas movie, right? Like It's about getting your wings, about getting your 4th star. So I hope everybody gets their 4th star or a 5th star. And, it reminds me, I don't talk much except in fact, it's been 100% Michigan, on every one of these broadcasts, but I did notice you mentioned something about a movie, and I wanted to ask you about it here before we concluded, because I like great TV myself. I'm watching Dexter New Blood.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same. If you like the old Dexter, it's the new Dexter is very similar. I'm right where to the latest episode, and I give it a thumbs up. Also, if you liked Narcos, I mean, that thing's season 3 in Mexico. That is awesome too. It's as good as all of them. But you had one about, I have Hulu, and you mentioned like some dogs and a Christmas.
Yeah.
This is a good movie.
Well, it's like it's kind of like background. Like Netflix releases every year. It's like a they have like a Yule log, like 40-minute video of just a Yule log burning in the background.
Sure.
This is kind of similar. It's like a whole series of stuff, and basically what it is just a bunch of puppies destroying Christmas presents, Christmas trees. They set up a bunch of stuff, and puppies just go around and just destroy it. And they have this whole list of things that are destroyed at the end of it. It's like a 45-minute thing where it's just puppies. There's no commentary or anything like that. It's just puppies, random puppies coming in, like different breeds and all that stuff. It was pretty funny. It's worth the watch. If you're a dog person, it's worth your time.
I am a dog. Instead of the Yuletide, I've just been running back to Michigan Ohio State game.
Yeah.
I don't know how Christmassy that is, but
right.
I have been doing that. For the memorabilia minute, 60 seconds, for one thing, I have a picture of, do you know who that is? A second, number 75 in the maize and blue. I'll give you another hint. He's going to be doing Michigan
yeah.
on the maize and blue. That is Thomas Gwines, number 75. And that is an autographed picture of Thomas. He will be on tonight. We'll be bringing you some Michigan football talk. We'll look back, I'm sure, at the Big Ten title and ahead to those dogs. What would Thomas do if he was lining up against Godzilla, 370 Jordan Davis, the Outland winner, right? So we'll see what his plan would be for that. All right, Josh, a busy weekend for you? Are you just taking it easy?
Well, I think this is my first quiet weekend off in quite a while, so I'm going to take it easy, but also, keep my ear to the ground, see what's happening on the recruiting trail. So we'll do a little bit of both.
You'll be busy.
Yeah.
You'll be busy. All right, take care. It was great talking with you.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.